The flickering torchlight casts dancing shadows on the cave wall, illuminating ancient paintings of half-human, half-beast figures crawling from deep underground. What did our ancestors truly witness in that profound darkness beneath their feet? Subterranean beings are far more than simple fantasy. They are a persistent archetype woven directly into the very fabric of human mythology across every continent and era. This journey will uncover how these echoes from beneath have fundamentally shaped our legends, our deepest fears, and our entire understanding of the unknown. You will discover a unified theory connecting ancient underworld gods to modern cryptid encounters, revealing why our most powerful stories so often emerge from the deepest places. Why do cultures with no possible contact share eerily similar tales of entities from below? What does this say about the hidden parts of our own minds? What forgotten truth might these collective whispers from the dark be trying to tell us? Our oldest stories whisper of a world that exists just below our feet. Across the globe, from the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia to the deep fjords of Scandinavia, cultures with no possible contact described eerily similar realms. These are the domains of chthonic beings, a term simply meaning entities from beneath the earth. The psychologist Carl Jung proposed that humanity shares a collective unconscious, a deep well of symbolic memories and instincts common to us all. Within this shared mind, the underworld is not just a physical place. It represents the hidden, primal parts of our own psyche, the dark and fertile soil from which our deepest fears and most creative thoughts sprout. Look at the ancient Greeks who feared Hades, a vast kingdom of shadow ruled by an unyielding god. The Mesopotamians spoke of Kur, a terrifying cavernous abyss. The Norse myths told of Svartalfheim, a subterranean world of dark elves and master smiths. This pattern is too consistent to be mere coincidence. Why does the underground captivate us so universally? Darkness naturally evokes mystery and danger. It is the realm of the unknown, where our senses fail and our imagination takes over. This makes it the perfect symbolic stage for powerful mythological figures who embody everything we cannot see or control. So is our instinctive fear of the dark and what crawls from deep places a learned behavior, or could it be an innate primal memory buried in our very bones? This universal fascination is the key that unlocks the specific and startling manifestations of these beings in our world's most enduring legends. Beneath the sun-scorched earth of ancient Mesopotamia lay not simply rock and soil, but a vast, mysterious ocean. This was the Abzu, a primordial realm of fresh water, the lifeblood of the world and the domain of the great god Enki. Far from a dark and fearsome hell, the Abzu was seen as the sacred source of all creation and ultimate wisdom. Within its watery depths, Enki ruled from his magnificent palace of coral and lapis lazuli, surrounded by strange, fish-like beings known as the Abgal, the Seven Sages. Ancient cuneiform tablets describe these sages as the ones who brought the divine knowledge of the gods directly to humanity. From the Abzu's hidden chambers, Enki bestowed the fundamental gifts of civilization, the very arts that raised humanity from a scattered tribes to a complex society. He gave them the sacred laws to govern their cities, the knowledge of planting and harvesting to ensure their survival, and the profound secrets of magic and ritual to understand the cosmos. This is one of our oldest and most profound narratives, a story where civilization itself does not descend from the heavens, but bubbles up from a benevolent, intelligent source deep within the earth. The idea that profound wisdom and cultural advancement could flow from subterranean beings fundamentally shifts our perspective. It was not a place of fear to be avoided, but a sacred source to be honored. This invites a compelling question. How did this concept of the wise underground patron echo across the world, appearing in the most unexpected of places? Yet the Mesopotamian vision of a benevolent, watery wisdom was not the only way ancient cultures perceived the powers below. Half a world away, the Greeks sculpted a far more complex and formidable vision of the subterranean realm. This was the house of Hades, a kingdom of immense scale and profound shadow, ruled by the stern god who shared its name and his queen, the captured spring, Persephone. Here, the concept of the Chthonic gods takes on a distinct and powerful meaning, separate from the shining Olympians who governed the sky and human affairs from their mountain peak. The Chthonic deities were those of the earth itself, of the soil, the harvest, and the deep, final underworld. Their power was primal, immense, and demanded a different kind of worship. Consider the goddess Hecate, a figure of immense and ancient power who held sway over magic, the crossroads, and the ghosts of the underworld. She was a liminal being, a keeper of secrets that could only be accessed in the spaces between worlds, often in the dead of night. Then there were the Erinyes, also called the Furies. These were not gods one would petition for a good harvest or a fortunate voyage. They were subterranean spirits of pure, relentless vengeance, born from the blood of the primordial sky. They would pursue those who had committed the most heinous crimes, like murdering a family member, emerging from the darkness below to torment the guilty without rest. The rituals for these below-ground powers were starkly different from those for the Olympians. Offerings to Zeus or Athena were made on high altars in the bright sunlight, lifted upwards with hope. But offerings to Hades, Hecate, or the spirits of the dead were performed at night. Libations of wine, blood, and milk were poured directly into deep pits or into the earth itself, a solemn feeding of the powers that resided in the soil and the rock beneath their feet. This practice reveals a deep-seated reverence mixed with a palpable fear. The Greeks were not simply honoring these gods, they were actively appeasing them, acknowledging a fundamental and terrifying power that existed just beneath the surface of their civilized world. This complex relationship shows a culture grappling profoundly with the concepts of death, fate, and the hidden knowledge that comes only from the deepest shadows. And from this fertile ground of fear and reverence, even more monstrous inhabitants of the deep would begin to take shape in the human imagination. Deep within the cold stone of the world, the rhythmic ring of a hammer on anvil echoes. This is the sound of the Dvergr, the Norse dwarves, master smiths whose forges were not built under the open sky, but carved into the very bones of the mountains. They were born from the earth in the most literal sense, formed by the gods from the maggots that festered within the flesh of the primordial giant, Ymir. Their origin story forever binds them to the soil and stone, making them children of the deep earth itself. These were not the comical figures of later fairy tales, but ancient, potent beings of immense skill and often grim temperament. They lived in perpetual darkness, in realms with names like Nidavellir, the Dark Fields, and their power was not in brute strength, but in a transcendent, almost magical craftsmanship. From their subterranean workshops came artifacts that would define the destiny of the gods themselves. They forged Thor's mighty hammer, Mjolnir, a weapon so powerful it could level mountains and defend the realms from giants. They created Odin's spear, Gungnir, which never missed its mark and sealed oaths with its unbreakable point. And when the god Loki played a cruel trick, cutting off the beautiful goddess Sif's golden hair, it was the dwarves who saved him from the god's wrath by crafting new hair of real, living gold that would grow from her scalp. Think about the profound symbolism here. The most powerful tools of the sky gods, the very instruments of their authority and protection, were not gifts from above. They were born from the darkness below, painstakingly shaped by beings who understood the secret properties of metal and stone. the Dwarves took the raw, unformed resources of the earth and transformed them into objects of legendary power. This narrative presents a powerful partnership between the world above and the world below. The gods of Asgard possessed the will and the purpose, but they relied entirely on the subterranean genius of the Dwarves to arm them for their cosmic struggles. It suggests that true power, the kind that shapes fate, requires an alliance with the deep, hidden forces of the earth. This idea of underground beings as the original artisans and technologists, gifting the world above with civilization's very tools, is a startlingly consistent echo across the globe. Beneath the roots of the sacred banyan tree and the foundations of the mightiest temples, another kingdom thrives in the depths. In the rich tapestry of Hindu and Buddhist mythology, the earth's core is not a barren wasteland, but a resplendent domain of jeweled palaces and glittering thrones. This is the realm of the Nagas, the Serpent Kings, who rule from their magnificent capital in Patala, a netherworld of breathtaking beauty and immense power. Far from simple monsters, the Nagas are divine beings, custodians of the earth's most vital treasures. They command the waters that give life, guard the minerals and gems hidden in the rock, and hold profound esoteric knowledge. Their very nature embodies the dual forces of creation and destruction that govern the natural world. One of the most revered stories tells of the Naga king, Machalinda. As the Buddha sat in deep meditation, a violent storm arose, threatening to break his concentration. Seeing this, Machalinda emerged from his subterranean abode. The great serpent coiled his body to form a seat for the Buddha, and then raised his magnificent hood like a canopy to shield the enlightened one from the lashing rain and howling wind. This act is not one of a beast, but of a compassionate and enlightened protector. It symbolizes a sacred pact between the wisdom of the world above and the protective, nurturing power of the world below. Yet the Naga's favor is not given lightly. When respected, they bring the life-giving monsoon rains that ensure bountiful harvests and prosperity for all. But if their domains are polluted or their dignity is offended, that same power can manifest as devastating floods and catastrophic earthquakes. This relationship reveals a deep, ancient understanding of ecology and spirituality intertwined. Humanity does not command the Nagas, it coexists with them, acknowledging that our survival is intrinsically linked to the favor of these powerful custodians of the Earth's primal forces. This profound connection to the very pulse of the planet, guarded by serpentine beings from beneath, finds a startlingly similar echo on the other side of the world, deep within the forests of the Americas. Across the vast deserts of the American Southwest, the Hopi people tell of two great world-ending cataclysms, an age of ice and an age of fire. When the surface of the earth became uninhabitable, humanity did not look to the stars for salvation, they looked down. They sought refuge with the Anu Sinum, the ant people, benevolent beings who lived in vast, labyrinthine cities deep beneath the ground. These subterranean dwellers opened their homes, offering sanctuary from the chaos above. The Hopi ancestors did not merely hide in the dark, they lived alongside these beings, preserving their sacred rituals, their language, and their agricultural knowledge within the safety of the earth's belly. The ant people were teachers and protectors, their underground world a cradle that safeguarded the very essence of Hopi culture, ensuring it would survive to be replanted on the surface when the world was made green again. This concept of the underworld as a protective womb is a powerful thread in Native American traditions. The Lakota speak of a race of ancient subterranean giants. The Cherokee know of the Yunwitsunsti, the little people, who make their homes in caves and rock crevices. These beings are often mischievous, but they can also be great healers and teachers for those who show them respect. In these stories, the deep earth is not a kingdom of the dead to be feared, but a living library of survival, a place of refuge that fundamentally shaped tribal identity and history. When survival on the surface was impossible, it was the world below that offered a second chance. This perspective presents a profound contrast. While the Greek underworld was a shadowy land of ghosts and the Norse dwarves were often grim and isolated craftsmen, here the subterranean realm is a sacred shelter. It reframes the very nature of the underground from a place of terror to a place of profound community and preservation. Why would this theme of benevolent, sheltering beings be so strong in the Americas? Perhaps the immense, untamed landscapes taught a simple truth, that sometimes the greatest safety is found not in rising above, but in going deep within. And as our own world faces its own potential cataclysms, these ancient echoes ask us a quiet, urgent question. If the surface ever became hostile again, where would our sanctuary be? The rolling green hills of Ireland and Scotland are dotted with strange, silent mounds that rise from the earth like sleeping giants. These are the sheer, ancient burial barrows that the local people knew were far more than simple graves. They were the shimmering doorways to the otherworld, the domain of the Abzu, the people of the mounds. Forget the tiny, winged sprites of modern fantasy. These were the original fairy folk, a powerful, majestic race who lived in a magnificent world that existed in perfect parallel to our own, just beneath the soil. They were considered the old gods of the land, the Tuatha De Danann, who were said to have retreated into these hollow hills after new invaders arrived, choosing to live underground rather than surrender their sovereignty. Their presence was a constant, palpable force in daily life, dictating a complex set of social rules that everyone understood. You did not build a fence across a ferry path, a straight, invisible road they traveled between their mounds. You avoided disturbing their thorn trees, and most importantly, you gave their Shia a wide berth on certain sacred nights like Samhain, when the veil between the worlds grew thin. The consequences for disrespect were severe and strangely poetic. A farmer who plowed over a ferry fort might find his cattle sickened or his crops failed. Worse still was the fate of those who accepted their hospitality. To eat the food of the Abzu or drink their wine was to fall under an eternal enchantment. There are countless tales of a person stumbling into a Shia for a single night of feasting, only to return to their village the next morning and find that 100 years had passed, their family and home long since turned to dust. They were taken into the earth where time flowed like a different river. This lore was not mere superstition. It was a fundamental part of the culture, shaping how people farmed, where they built their homes, and how they moved through the landscape. The hidden world of the Shia directly governed the visible world of humankind, a constant reminder that the earth beneath our feet is not entirely our own. The warmth of the hearth and the scent of baking bread filled the humble wooden home, a sanctuary against the vast, cold Russian night. And in this most intimate of spaces, the family was never truly alone. Beneath the great brick stove, or perhaps deep in the shadowy cellar, lived the Domovoy. He was a small, often bearded creature, a spirit of the earth who had chosen to dwell not in a distant underworld, but directly within the human home. This subterranean being was the ultimate guardian, his own well-being mystically fused with the fortune of the entire household. A respected Domovoy was a priceless member of the family. He was believed to quietly help with chores during the night, to protect the precious livestock from illness, and to gently tug at the hair of a sleeping family member to warn them of an approaching fire or a coming storm. He was the living soul of the home itself, a piece of the wild earth tamed by mutual respect. But this relationship was a delicate contract. If the family was lazy, quarrelsome, or failed to show him proper respect by leaving out a small offering of food, the Domovoy nature would turn. The same spirit who once protected the cows would now twist their tails. The being who quietly tidied would now smash plates in the dead of night. pull the blankets from sleepers and create an atmosphere of lingering dread that invited all manner of misfortune. This belief system brought the influence of the subterranean world into the very heart of daily life. The Domovoy was not a distant god in a shadowy kingdom or a mighty smith in a mountain deep. He was an immediate, interactive presence, a constant reminder that the powers of the world below could be benevolent partners or vengeful poltergeists, all depending on how they were treated within the walls of one's own home. This personalization of the underground set the stage for a new era, where these ancient echoes would begin to twist into something darker, moving from the protective hearth into the haunted corridors of medieval Europe. The warmth of the family hearth gave way to the deep, impenetrable shadows of the medieval woods. In an age defined by superstition and a fragile grasp on survival, the wilderness was not a place of beauty, but a domain of raw, untamed danger. And it was from the deepest parts of this landscape, from the caves and the mines and the dark hollows under ancient bridges, that a new breed of subterranean being began to emerge in the popular imagination. The powerful, ancestral spirits of the land were slowly twisting into something far more malevolent. The Norse Dvergr, the master smiths of legend, shrank in the public mind into the dwarves of folklore, still skilled but now often portrayed as reclusive and greedy, hoarding their gold in deep mountain caves. But they were not the only inhabitants of the dark. This was the era of the goblin, the kobold, and the troll. These creatures were not gods to be appeased or guardians to be respected. They were pests and predators, embodiments of the earth's inherent perils. A kobold might haunt a mine, not to help the miners, but to lead them astray, extinguish their lanterns, or cause tunnels to collapse if they were not paid their due in bread or milk. A troll living beneath a bridge did not offer wisdom. It demanded a bloody toll from any who dared to cross. This was a profound shift in the mythology. The subterranean world was no longer just a source of wisdom, protection, or sacred power. It had become a place of active malice, reflecting humanity's own fear of the wild, unknown spaces that still dominated their world. This fear had a direct economic impact. Miners, whose very livelihood depended on venturing into the earth's belly, developed intricate rituals to placate these underground spirits. They would leave small offerings of food at the entrance of a new shaft or speak in hushed, respectful tones to avoid angering the entities they called the little men. Their survival and the flow of precious metals that fueled kingdoms literally depended on maintaining a fragile peace with the beings they believed dwelled in the rock. This transformation from revered earth spirits to feared goblins marks a critical point in our story. It signals a growing disconnect between humanity and the natural world, a relationship shifting from coexistence to conquest. As we began to see the wilderness as something to be tamed and the earth's depths as something to be plundered, the echoes from beneath grew darker, more sinister, and began to creep closer to our own modern world. The shadowy goblins of the mine shaft did not vanish with the coming of the electric light. They simply found new tunnels to inhabit. By the middle of the 20th century, the ancient fear of beings from below had shifted once more, this time into the elusive forms of modern cryptids. These were not the fairies or dwarves of old folklore, but terrifyingly unique entities that seemed to crawl directly from the industrial shadows. Consider the chilling case of the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Over 13 months in the late 1960s, this massive, winged humanoid with glowing red eyes was seen by hundreds of credible witnesses. Its appearance was consistently linked to a specific, eerie location, the abandoned Tinti area, a former World War II munitions plant riddled with a network of concrete bunkers and underground tunnels. This was not a remote forest or a deep cave, but a man-made subterranean complex, a perfect modern lair for a creature of legend. Then, in April of 1977, the town of Dover, Massachusetts, was visited by something even more bizarre. The Dover demon was a small, hairless being with long, spindly limbs and a large, melon-shaped head, its eyes glowing a faint orange in the dark. Witnesses described it clinging to the stone walls by the roadside, moving with an unnatural, almost fluid grace before vanishing back into the rocky, wooded terrain. In both instances, the pattern is unmistakable. These bizarre entities were not seen in open fields or city centers, but at the threshold of hidden underground spaces, abandoned industrial sites, and rocky outcrops that could conceal cave systems. This is the ancient archetype of the subterranean being, fully adapted to the modern world. Our industrial ruins and forgotten infrastructure have become the new hollow hills and sheer mounds. The legends were never truly about the past. They are a living, breathing part of our present, suggesting that our deepest fears and fascinations will always find a way to manifest, rising from the dark places we have learned to build for ourselves. The ground itself can feel alive with a terrible, unpredictable will. A sudden earthquake shatters a city, a volcano paints the sky with fire, and a gaping sinkhole swallows a home without warning. For our ancestors, these were not random geological events. They were the visible actions of a conscious, powerful intelligence dwelling deep below the surface. An earthquake was the stirring of a colossal being in its sleep. A volcanic eruption was its fiery breath, and the discovery of a massive, echoing cave system was undeniable proof of a hidden world with its own inhabitants. These tangible, terrifying experiences provided the foundational evidence for the existence of subterranean beings, giving physical form to humanity's deepest anxieties. When the very earth you stand on can betray you in an instant, what other explanation could there be but the wrath of something living within it? This external reality finds a perfect partner within our own minds. Step into the profound silence of a deep cave, a place of absolute darkness where your own heartbeat becomes the loudest sound. This environment triggers a primal cascade within the human brain. It is the domain of predators we evolved to fear, a space of confinement that triggers claustrophobia, and a sensory deprivation chamber that forces the mind to turn inward. In such states, the line between perception and hallucination blurs. The flickering torchlight on a cave wall can easily become a dancing spirit. The echo of a falling pebble can transform into the footstep of an unseen follower, and the mind, starved for external input, begins to project its own deepest fears and archetypes into the void. This is not mere superstition, it is a documented psychological phenomenon. The brain, confronted with the unnatural silence and darkness of the deep earth, can enter an altered state of consciousness, one where visions and encounters feel utterly real. So when an ancient shaman or a medieval miner emerged from a cave speaking of a horned spirit or a little man made of stone, they were likely reporting a genuine, deeply felt experience, a powerful fusion of real geological power and internal psychological reality. The legends of beings from below are not pure fantasy. They are the human mind's best attempt to explain the terrifying, observable power of the earth and the profound, often frightening, mysteries of its own inner workings. These subterranean beings are far more than just characters in old tales. They are powerful cultural metaphors, personifications of the deepest forces within the human psyche and society. The Greek Furies, born from the earth to avenge blood crimes, are not just monsters. They are the very embodiment of a guilty conscience, the inescapable, haunting knowledge of a terrible wrong that pursues a person without rest or mercy. They externalize the internal torment of guilt, giving it a terrifying, tangible form that crawls up from the underworld to torment the soul. Contrast this with the Norse dwarves toiling in their mountain forges. They represent the hidden, industrious power of nature itself, the slow, patient processes that transform raw ore into precious metal, and by extension, the human capacity for dedicated craftsmanship. Their gifts to the gods are a metaphor for how civilization relies on the unseen labor and specialized skill that forms the foundation of any advanced society. Then consider the Hopi ant people who offered sanctuary beneath the ground. They are a profound symbol of communal survival and adaptation in the face of existential threat. Their story is not about individual heroes, but about the collective strength and wisdom needed to preserve a culture through a cataclysm, hiding deep within the earth like seeds waiting for the right conditions to sprout again. When we view these legends through this lens, they transform from simple fables into sophisticated narrative tools. They were the ancient world's way of explaining complex psychological states, of codifying social contracts, and of defining humanity's delicate, often terrifying, relationship with the natural environment. The recurring theme of underground beings is a cultural dream, a shared story our ancestors told to make sense of the parts of life that were too vast, too frightening, or too abstract to articulate any other way. By decoding these metaphors, we are not just reading myths, we are reading the deepest concerns and highest values of the cultures that dreamed them into existence. We are seeing the human mind at work, using the image of the world beneath our feet to understand the world within our own hearts. The rhythmic beat of a shaman's drum is not just a sound, it is a vehicle. For countless generations across the globe, spiritual seekers have used this steady pulse, along with sacred plants and profound fasting, to embark on a very specific kind of voyage, a descent into the world beneath our feet. In the rich traditions of shamanism, the underworld is not a final resting place for the dead, but a vibrant, living realm of spirits, a source of profound healing and hidden knowledge. A Siberian shaman lying in a darkened tent with the drumbeat mimicking a heartbeat would feel their consciousness spiral down through roots and stone, journeying into the lower world. There they might meet a power animal, a spirit guide in the form of a bear or a wolf, emerging from a cavern to bestow strength and protection upon the entire community. In the Amazon rainforest, an ayahuasquero drinks the bitter, visionary brew made from the Banisteriopsis vine. As the effects take hold, the forest itself seems to peel back, revealing intricate geometric tunnels and luminous serpents coiling in subterranean rivers. These are the Boyuna, powerful anaconda spirits of the deep earth, who are believed to teach the secrets of plant medicine and diagnose the spiritual roots of physical illness. The shaman's quest was often to retrieve something vital, a lost soul fragment of a sick person that had strayed into the darkness, or to bargain with the Chthonic spirits for the knowledge to heal. This reframes the entire concept of the underground. It is not solely a place of fear and punishment, but a cosmic clinic and a library of the soul. These consistent, cross-cultural experiences suggest that the echoes from beneath are not just external legends, but internal landscapes. The subterranean beings that appear in these trance states are powerful archetypes arising from the deepest layers of the human mind, accessible only when our ordinary consciousness is shifted into an altered state. The shaman, by voluntarily crossing that threshold, demonstrates that the power of the deep earth can be approached, communicated with, and harnessed for the good of all. This spiritual dimension adds a breathtaking layer to our understanding, proposing that the ultimate source of these legends might be found not in forgotten history, but in the very architecture of human perception itself. A hero stands at the mouth of a cave, staring into an abyss from which no one has ever returned. This singular image, etched into the mythology of nearly every culture on Earth, reveals a pattern so deep and widespread it cannot be ignored. It is the story of the descent, a journey into the underworld that plays out with stunning similarity from one civilization to the next. In ancient Greece, the legendary musician Orpheus makes this very trek. His beloved wife, Eurydice, has died, and his grief is so profound that he dares to do the unthinkable. He walks into the realm of Hades, using his enchanting music to soothe the fearsome three-headed dog Cerberus and to charm the very ghosts of the dead. His goal is to retrieve Eurydice and bring her back to the land of the living, a plea that moves even the cold heart of the death god himself. Hades agrees, but with one famous condition: Orpheus must not look back at her until they have both reached the sunlight. It is a test of faith, and in his moment of terrible doubt, he turns and loses her forever. This story of a quest into the depths for love, fraught with rules and the risk of ultimate failure, is not unique to Greece. Far to the east, in Mesopotamia, the great goddess Inanna, queen of heaven, makes her own descent. She abandons her celestial thrones and temples to enter the underworld, the grim domain of her sister, Ereshkigal. At each of the 7 gates leading downward, Inanna is stripped of her divine regalia, her crown, her jewelry, her robes, until she stands naked and powerless before her sister, who immediately strikes her dead and hangs her corpse on a hook. Inanna's story is not about retrieving a lover, but about confronting raw, destructive power and the stark reality of death itself. Her eventual resurrection, negotiated by loyal servants, comes with a heavy price. Someone must take her place in the underworld, a sacrifice that ensures the cycle of life and death continues. Then there is the world's oldest written epic, the story of Gilgamesh. This mighty king, terrified by the death of his friend Enkidu, becomes obsessed with conquering mortality. His desperate quest leads him to seek out Utnapishtim, the one mortal granted eternal life by the gods, who resides in a far-off, hidden place that can only be reached by a terrifying journey through a tunnel under a mountain, a symbolic underworld. Gilgamesh finds this ancient sage not on a mountain peak, but in a liminal space, and learns the hard truth that immortality is not meant for humankind. The wisdom he gains is not the secret of eternal life, but the acceptance of his own mortality. Look at the common threads woven through these tales from cultures that never knew each other. Each hero, whether Orpheus, Inanna, or Gilgamesh, makes a conscious choice to cross the threshold into the world below. They all face guardians and trials, from 3-headed hounds to 7 locked gates. They each seek something profound, a lost love, ultimate power, or the answer to death itself. And crucially, their return is never guaranteed and always comes at a cost. This is not a coincidence. This global pattern points to a fundamental human narrative, a story we have been telling ourselves since the dawn of consciousness. The subterranean realm serves as the ultimate stage for the drama of transformation. It is the place we go, in our collective imagination, to confront what we fear most, to lose our old selves, and to hopefully return changed and wiser, even if we are scarred by the journey. The underworld is the crucible of the human soul, and every culture has its own map for navigating its shadows. Dante Alighieri's journey through the 9 circles of hell was not a flight of pure imagination, but a chilling architectural blueprint built from the stones of older underworlds. His Inferno, written in the 14th century, gave the Christian afterlife a terrifying, tangible geography, a subterranean realm of precise and gruesome justice where every sin had its own dedicated level of torment. This vision, descending from the frozen pit of Cocytus to the fiery depths of Dis, permanently branded itself onto the Western mind, shaping the very image of damnation for centuries. It translated the abstract fear of divine punishment into a physical, navigable space deep within the earth, a place you could, in a sense, visit and map. Centuries later, the brothers Grimm were not creating fairy tales so much as they were excavating them from the German soil. Their collections are filled with the echoes of the old, wild earth, witches who live in edible houses deep in the woods, dwarves who mine for gems in mountain caverns, and goblins who haunt the shadows just beyond the village lantern light. These stories, told by the hearth to wide-eyed listeners, kept the ancient, fearful reverence for the underground alive in the popular consciousness, a folklore that whispered of the otherworlds existing just a stone's throw from the familiar path. Then came a quiet Oxford professor, J.R.R. Tolkien, a man who did not merely read these old myths, he breathed them in. As a master of ancient languages and Northern European legends, he understood the deep power of the subterranean archetype. In his hands, the collective whispers of the past synthesized into the grand tapestry of Middle-earth. He gave us the dwarves of Moria, not as comical figures, but as the proud, ancient children of the earth, heirs to the Norse Dvergr, whose majestic underground cities echoed with the ring of hammers and a deep, tragic longing for their lost glory. And from the darker side of the folklore tradition, he summoned the goblins, later the Uruk-hai, festering in the deep places of the misty mountains, a direct lineage from the malevolent kobolds and trolls of medieval minds. Tolkien's genius was in his synthesis. He took the scattered bones of European subterranean mythology and clothed them in new flesh, creating a modern mythology that felt as ancient and true as the legends that inspired it. His work proves that the archetypes born in the darkness of ancient caves had lost none of their power. They were simply waiting for a new storyteller to lead us back to their gates. The ancient Mesopotamian sages did not find their wisdom in the stars, but in the dark, silent waters of the Abzu. These Abgal, the 7 fish-like beings who served the god Enki, were the original librarians of a celestial collection known as the Mi. The Mi were not simply ideas, they were the tangible, divine decrees for every aspect of civilization, from the art of kingship and the skill of the blacksmith to the profound concepts of truth and law. Possession of the Mi meant mastery over the very fabric of a functioning society, and this ultimate power was guarded not in a heavenly vault, but in a palace of coral at the bottom of a subterranean sea. This pattern of hidden, underground knowledge repeats itself across the world with startling consistency. The Norse dwarves, toiling in their sunless forges, were masters of more than just metal. They understood the secret language of the runes, the magical alphabet that could carve fate into reality, bind oaths, and heal wounds. Their craft was a form of applied esoteric knowledge, a deep understanding of the hidden properties locked within the Earth's raw materials. This theme extends beyond mythology into the realm of mystical philosophy. In certain Gnostic traditions, the entire material world was viewed as a kind of vast subterranean prison, a gloomy cave constructed by a flawed or malevolent creator. The human spirit, a divine spark of the true, unknowable God, was trapped deep within this physical shell. Salvation, therefore, was not found through faith alone, but through a specific and secret form of knowledge, a gnosis. This liberating truth was the ultimate forbidden law, the key that could unlock the soul from its earthy tomb and allow it to return to the realm of pure light. In all these traditions, the underworld transforms from a mere land of the dead into a profound repository of hidden truths. It becomes the world's great forbidden library, a university for the soul where the core secrets of existence, technology, and spirit are kept under lock and key. Why is this knowledge so consistently buried? Perhaps because it is too potent, too dangerous for casual handling. Access is never granted to the many, only to the brave, the pure, or the initiated who are willing to make the perilous descent, both literal and metaphorical. The quest for this secret knowledge becomes the ultimate heroic journey, linking the physical depths of the earth to the very depths of human understanding. This primal link between the underground and enlightenment would eventually find its most famous expression in the story of a single man, sitting in a cave and staring at the wall. This profound transformation did not happen overnight. The powerful Chthonic gods of the ancient world, like Hades and Enki, were complex figures who commanded a mixture of reverence and dread. They were not evil, they were essential, representing fundamental forces like death, the afterlife, and the hidden sources of wisdom that balanced the cosmic order. A Greek farmer making an offering to Hades was not worshipping a devil. He was acknowledging a necessary, if fearsome, king who ruled a realm as real and vital as that of his brother Zeus. This was a worldview based on balance, where the world above and the world below were two halves of a single, interconnected reality. The rise of centralized monotheistic faiths, particularly Christianity, initiated a dramatic cultural reinterpretation of these ancient powers. The new religious framework had a clear, dualistic battlefield, a single, benevolent God in heaven, and a single, rebellious adversary who was cast down. The old, ambivalent gods and spirits of the land did not simply vanish. They were systematically recast as soldiers in the enemy's army. The powerful horned god Cernunnos, a lord of animals and fertility from Celtic tradition, found his likeness merged into the image of the Christian devil. The mischievous but often helpful nature spirits of the fields and forests were reduced to malevolent imps and demons, their old haunts now considered haunted ground. The underworld itself was no longer a necessary part of the cosmic map. It was redefined as hell, a place of eternal, punitive torment for sinners, a pit of fire and brimstone ruled by the ultimate subterranean being, Satan. This was a fundamental rewriting of the narrative. The deep earth was stripped of its sacred ambiguity and became a place of pure, unmitigated evil. What was once a source of wisdom and a realm of necessary balance was now a spiritual prison to be feared and avoided at all costs. This cultural shift echoes through centuries of Western art, literature, and thought, coloring our perception of caves, caverns, and anything that lies deep beneath the surface. The very ground under our feet became suspect, its hidden inhabitants forever cast in a new, terrifying light. An entire world could be waiting for us not across the oceans, but directly beneath our feet. The hollow earth theory stands as one of history's most ambitious attempts to give the ancient underworld a real address on a map. This was not mere folklore, but a scientific, if deeply fringe, hypothesis championed by serious minds. The astronomer Edmund Halley, of comet fame, proposed that our planet was a series of concentric shells spinning inside one another, each with its own atmosphere and possibly even its own sun, with the aurora borealis being the escaped light from this brilliant inner world. A century later, the American Army officer John Cleves Sims became so captivated by the idea that he campaigned relentlessly for an expedition, insisting there were massive, warm holes at the north and south poles that led directly into the planet's interior. He envisioned a habitable and luminous inner surface, a new continent awaiting discovery. This theory did more than just rearrange geology. It provided a blank canvas for the human imagination. Writers quickly populated this vast interior with the advanced civilizations that mythology had always hinted lived below. Jules Verne's seminal novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth, sent his protagonists down an Icelandic volcano into a breathtaking subterranean world, complete with a vast ocean, prehistoric creatures, and giant mushrooms illuminating the cavernous sky. Here, the underworld was no longer a shadowy land of ghosts, but a lost world of biological wonders and ancient secrets. This transformation is profoundly telling. The hollow earth theory represents a pivotal moment where humanity tried to rationalize the mythological underworld, to strip it of its spiritual mystery and recast it as a physical, explorable destination. It was an effort to use the emerging language of science and exploration to finally pin down the location of those persistent echoes from beneath. The desire was not to dismiss the old stories, but to prove them literally true, to confirm that the kingdom of the Nagas, the realm of the Aushi, or the workshops of the Dwarves were not just in our minds, but waiting in the dark, ready for us to turn the next corner and finally meet their inhabitants face to face. The myth of alligators prowling the sewers of New York City is a perfect modern echo of our oldest fears. This persistent urban legend, born in the 1930s, tells of baby pet alligators flushed down toilets, surviving and growing to monstrous sizes in the warm, dark labyrinth beneath the streets. While biologically implausible, the story captured the public imagination because it mapped an ancient terror onto a modern landscape. The sprawling, man-made caverns of our sewer and subway systems became the new uncharted wilderness, a place where something primal and predatory could thrive just inches below our bustling, civilized world. This legend channels a specific anxiety about our own creations, the hidden, repulsive underbelly of the city we built, and the fear that the wildness we tried to flush away might come back to reclaim its territory. This archetype has evolved once more in the digital age with the rise of creepypasta, the internet's own folklore. Entities like the rake, a pale, hairless humanoid that stalks its victims at night, or the faceless slender man who lurks in deep woods and empty buildings, are classic subterranean beings adapted for a new era. They are rarely described as living in traditional caves, but they consistently emerge from the margins, the forgotten woods, the abandoned tunnels, and the dark spaces at the edge of suburbia. They are creatures of the liminal, the in-between places that mirror the psychological threshold the underworld has always represented. These digital myths use the familiar trope of a threatening entity from below to channel our modern anxieties about isolation in a connected world, the loss of natural spaces, and the unseen dangers lurking within our own technology. The archetype proves its incredible resilience, constantly shape-shifting to give form to whatever we fear most in the dark, whether it is a physical creature in a sewer or a digital phantom in the woods behind our house. A farmer's plow strikes not soft soil but something massive and unyielding. He digs carefully, only to uncover a bone longer than a man is tall, a skull the size of a barrel. In a world without the concept of paleontology, what else could this be but the skeleton of a giant from a forgotten age, a being that once walked the earth before being buried in its depths? Such accidental discoveries were not rare. The massive, fossilized remains of mammoths and other prehistoric megafauna provided tangible, physical evidence that the legends of giants and underground monsters were true. A Neanderthal skull, with its heavy, sloping brow and lack of a chin, did not look entirely human to a medieval or even ancient farmer who stumbled upon it. It was a troll's skull, concrete proof that the ugly, brutish beings of folklore were not just stories, but had once lived and died in these very hills. These finds created a powerful feedback loop between the physical world and the mythological one. The legend provided a framework for understanding the bizarre discovery, and the discovery, in turn, validated and cemented the legend for generations. But what if the discovery was not a single bone, but an entire city buried beneath your feet? In the 1860s, excavations in Turkey began to reveal the ancient settlement of Çatalhöyük, a 9,000-year-old city where houses were built directly against one another, with entrances through the roofs. For local people hearing of this, it must have seemed like evidence of a truly subterranean civilization, a hive-like existence straight out of the oldest tales. Even more striking is the vast underground city of Derinkuyu, also in Cappadocia. This was not a simple cave network, but an elaborate, multi-level metropolis carved deep into the volcanic rock, capable of sheltering thousands of people, complete with stables, churches, and ventilation shafts. If a traveler from a distant land encountered such a place, perhaps long after it had been abandoned by its original builders, what story would they tell when they returned home? They would speak of a people who did not live under the sun, but in a vast, intricate kingdom of stone, a race of troglodytes or dwarves who had vanished back into the earth. Archaeology did not just inspire these legends, it gave them a foundation in reality. Every strange bone and every lost, buried city became a piece of a puzzle that humanity was desperate to solve, using the only map they had, the rich and detailed geography of their own myths. The earth was not keeping its secrets quietly. It was actively offering up relics that whispered of the impossible. A single, unifying thread runs through the world's great religions, the conviction that a significant realm for the dead exists deep beneath our feet. This ancient archetype was not discarded with the rise of monotheism and organized faith, but was instead formalized, codified into powerful theological doctrines that have guided the spiritual lives of billions. In the Hebrew tradition, this place was Sheol, a concept far removed from the fiery pits of later imagination. Sheol was a vast, silent cavern beneath the earth, a land of gloom and forgetfulness where all souls, righteous and wicked alike, descended after death. It was a shadow existence, a place where the vibrancy of life and the presence of God were utterly absent. This was not a realm of punishment, but of neutral, collective silence, a holding place for the shades of humanity that reflected a more ambiguous understanding of the afterlife. Centuries later, Christianity would build upon this foundation, but with a profound moral shift. The Christian hell transformed the neutral underworld into a place of active, eternal judgment. Located beneath the earth, it became a prison of fire and torment, ruled by Satan, where souls were punished for their sins with a precision that mirrored divine justice. This was the ultimate institutionalization of the underworld, a domain of pure moral consequence that served as a stark warning for the living. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Buddhism developed its own intricate subterranean geography, Naraka. This is not a single hell, but a vast, complex system of purgatorial realms located beneath the continent of Jambudvipa, our world. Here, beings are reborn not for eternal damnation, but as a direct result of negative karma accumulated in past lives. The suffering in Naraka is intense and seemingly endless, yet it is ultimately temporary, a process of purification that continues until the negative karma is exhausted, allowing the being to be reborn into a higher form of life. The contrast is revealing. Sheol is a shadowy collective fate, hell is a permanent state of punitive justice, and Naraka is a temporary, albeit brutal, school for the soul. Each represents a different answer to the same fundamental human questions about justice, mortality, and what lies beyond. By placing these realms beneath the earth, these world religions gave a physical, tangible location to the ultimate unknown, grounding our deepest spiritual fears and hopes in the very soil we walk upon. They took the raw, primal fear of the dark beneath our feet and built it into the architecture of salvation itself. These ancient stories now whisper a startlingly modern truth. The Serpent Lords, the household guardians, and the subterranean teachers were never just spirits. They were the living voice of the planet itself. Consider the Nagas, the divine serpents of Hindu lore who command the waters and guard the earth's treasures. When revered, they bless the land with nourishing rains, ensuring a bountiful harvest. But if their rivers are polluted or their sacred groves are desecrated, their wrath manifests as devastating floods and parching droughts. This is not merely a myth, it is a precise, symbolic narrative of our relationship with the water cycle and the consequences of its disruption. The Naga is the ecosystem personified, its favor a metaphor for the delicate balance required to sustain life. This ecological interpretation extends even to the humble home. The Domovoy, the earthy spirit of the Russian hearth, was a barometer for the family's relationship with their immediate environment. A tidy, respectful household that left out offerings of bread and salt was rewarded with protection and prosperity. But a lazy, wasteful family that neglected their home would suffer the Domovoy's poltergeist-like vengeance. This can be read as an ancient lesson in sustainable living, a warning that disrespect for your immediate habitat, the mismanagement of resources, and the generation of waste invites direct, tangible misfortune. The spirit's anger is the consequence of ecological neglect playing out on a microcosmic scale. And what of the Hopi ant people who offered sanctuary beneath a dying world? They represent the ultimate ecological wisdom of adaptation and communal survival. Their underground cities are a blueprint for living in harmony with the Earth's limits, a model of efficient, collective existence that preserved culture through a cataclysm. Their story is a profound allegory for resilience, suggesting that when the surface world becomes unsustainable due to our actions, our only refuge might be a return to the principles of balance and community that these subterranean beings have always symbolized. Seen through this lens, these myths transform into humanity's first environmental prophecies. The beings from below are not monsters to be feared, but guardians to be heeded. Their recurring message across millennia and continents is the same, that the Earth is a conscious, responsive partner, and our survival depends on recognizing the power we have long attributed to these hidden entities as the very real, fragile systems of our world. A new generation now explores these ancient depths not with pickaxes and torches, but with controllers and keyboards. Video games have become the modern era's most direct conduit to the subterranean archetype, transforming players from passive listeners into active participants in the underworld narrative. In the blocky, seemingly simple world of Minecraft, survival's first frantic night is often spent digging frantically into a hillside. That initial scratch in the dirt reveals an entire cosmos below, a labyrinthine network of caverns filled with gurgling lava, precious ores, and the moans of zombies waiting in the dark. The game's core loop is a perfect digital echo of our oldest stories. You must venture down to gather the resources needed to build and prosper in the world above. The deeper you go, the greater the danger, but the more profound the reward. Similarly, Terraria presents a world where progress is measured vertically. The lush surface is merely a starting point. True power, from mythic weapons to magical armor, is locked away in sprawling underground jungles, hellish caverns dripping with crimson corruption, and sunken temples guarded by ancient mechanical beasts. These are not just game levels, they are interactive manifestations of the mythological descent, where players enact the hero's journey with every block they mine. Then there is the bleak, punishing world of Dark Souls, where the very earth seems to hold a grudge. Its most terrifying areas are often those that plunge downward into the poisonous Blighttown swamp, the tomb of the giants shrouded in absolute blackness, or the ash lake at the root of the world where ancient stone arch trees hold up the sky. In these digital underworlds, the fear, the wonder, and the relentless pursuit of hidden power are all perfectly preserved, proving the archetype's mechanics are as compelling as ever. When the game is turned off, the conversation does not end. It simply moves to a new kind of hidden world. Vast online forums and dedicated subreddits have become our global campfire, a virtual cavern where thousands gather to share their own modern echoes. Here, players post screenshots of a bizarre cave formation they discovered. Theorists weave elaborate explanations for a game's underground lore, and cryptid enthusiasts analyze blurry footage of something seen in the woods. These digital spaces are the new Subterranean, a network of hidden channels where information and mystery flow like underground rivers, connecting people through a shared fascination with what lies beneath. The stories have not changed, only the medium through which we tell them and explore their depths ourselves. A strange light flickers in the forest, a shadow moves with impossible speed, and a story is born. Yet the cold lens of skepticism offers a different genesis for these encounters, one rooted not in hidden worlds, but in the fascinating quirks of our own perception. Many sightings of subterranean creatures begin with a simple case of mistaken identity. A large barn owl, its wingspan ghostly and silent in the twilight, can be easily transformed into a winged humanoid like the Mothman by a startled mind. A fisher cat or a misplaced mountain lion seen for a split second in the headlights of a car can become the basis for a legend of a monstrous, hunchbacked beast scurrying from a drainage tunnel. Our brains are wired to identify potential threats quickly, and in low-light conditions, this survival mechanism often fills in the blanks with the worst-case scenario. This is compounded by a powerful psychological phenomenon known as pareidolia, our brain's instinctive tendency to find familiar patterns, especially faces, in random stimuli. The gnarled roots of a tree in a dark cave can become a twisted, leering visage. The play of shadow and rock in an old mine shaft can resolve into the figure of a small, hunched-over man. We are not lying when we report these visions. We are simply seeing what our brains are hardwired to see, pattern and intention in the chaotic dark. And sometimes the explanation is even more straightforward, the human hand itself. From the mischievous local spinning a tale to the elaborate hoaxer seeking fame, the deliberate fabrication of evidence has fueled countless legends, muddying the waters for those seeking a genuine mystery. This critical examination extends to the grandest theory of all, the hollow earth. The idea of a habitable inner world is a breathtaking piece of speculative fiction, but it collapses under the immense weight of geological reality. Our understanding of plate tectonics and seismology reveals a planet with a solid mantle and a molten core of incredible density and heat. The pressure at those depths would crush any conceivable cavern, and the notion of a central sun defies every law of thermodynamics we know. There is no physical evidence, no seismic echo, no gravitational anomaly that points to a vast, empty space inside our world, let alone one populated by ancient civilizations. Embracing this skeptical perspective is not an act of dismissing the power of these stories. On the contrary, it deepens the mystery by shifting the focus from what might be lurking in the caves to the incredible power of the human mind to populate them. Our capacity for pattern-seeking and story-making is not a flaw. It is the very engine that created our cultures, our religions, and our art. The real subterranean beings, in a sense, were us all along, projecting our deepest fears, our hopes, and our innate need for narrative onto the blank canvas of the dark. This leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. If these legends are not literally true, why do their core themes feel so universal and true to our experience of the world? The ground beneath our feet is not a barren wasteland, but a living, breathing frontier. Recent scientific exploration has shattered our old assumptions, revealing a hidden world teeming with life miles below the surface. This is the deep biosphere, a vast ecosystem of microbial organisms thriving in total darkness under immense pressure and without any energy from the sun. These extremophiles feed on chemicals and radioactive minerals from the Earth's crust, a form of existence that completely rewrites the rules of biology. If life can flourish in such hellish conditions here, what other forms might be waiting in the deep rock? The discovery of these microscopic realms is the first step toward a profound possibility. What if we one day find more complex life in these depths? Perhaps a worm that feeds on basalt or a blind, translucent creature navigating subterranean aquifers. Such a find would fundamentally blur the line between scientific discovery and ancient legend. The stories of entire civilizations living below would suddenly feel less like fantasy and more like a prophetic glimpse of a biological truth we are only now beginning to grasp. As we push our own boundaries, we are actively creating the settings for new myths, ambitious plans for deeper subterranean cities, vast networks of transit tunnels, and even proposals to colonize the lava tubes of the Moon and Mars are turning science fiction into a blueprint for tomorrow. Imagine a future where a maintenance worker in a Martian colony, alone in a deep lava tube, hears a scraping sound from a ventilation shaft that should be empty. Or a family living in an underground arcology begins to notice strange, rhythmic vibrations coming from the bedrock wall their apartment is carved into. These are the seeds of tomorrow's legends. The human need to populate the dark with meaning will not vanish with fluorescent lights and reinforced concrete. It will simply adapt. The echoes from beneath are not fading, they are evolving, waiting for us to dig just a little deeper and give them a new shape for a new age. So we arrive at a single, startling conclusion. The countless legends of subterranean beings are not a scattered collection of random superstitions. They are a unified phenomenon, a complex tapestry woven from 4 distinct but inseparable threads. The first thread is the raw, physical power of the earth itself. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the discovery of vast, echoing caverns provided undeniable, tangible evidence of a powerful, living world beneath our feet. Our ancestors were not fantasizing, they were interpreting the terrifying and magnificent reality of the planet they lived on. The second thread is the deep, internal landscape of the human mind. In the profound silence and sensory deprivation of a deep cave, the brain, starved for input, begins to project its own primal archetypes into the void. The fear of predators, the dread of confinement, and the very structure of our unconscious mind gave these geological forces a face and a form. The third thread is cultural metaphor. These beings became the perfect vessels for explaining complex, abstract concepts. The Furies personified a guilty conscience, the Dwarves symbolized the hidden power of craftsmanship, and the Ant people represented the wisdom of communal survival. They were narrative tools for understanding justice, technology, and our place in the natural world. And the final, most tantalizing thread is the possibility of fleeting, genuine encounters with the unknown denizens of our own planet, from the misunderstood animals seen in the dark to the potential for life forms in the deep biosphere we have yet to fully discover. Together, these threads form a single, enduring dialogue. The echoes from beneath are humanity's ancient, collective attempt to give a name to the formless darkness, to explain the unexplainable power of nature, and to map the most hidden territories of our own consciousness. They are not childish fears to be outgrown, but a fundamental and profound part of the human experience, a story we have been telling ourselves about the world below and the world within since the very first campfire was lit against the encroaching night. From the sacred Abzu of ancient Sumer to the concrete labyrinths of our modern sewer systems, this epic journey reveals a truth buried not in rock, but in the bedrock of human consciousness. The concept of subterranean beings is one of our oldest and most persistent archetypes, a story whispered across every continent and every era. These entities have served us in profound ways. They gave faces to the terrifying power of earthquakes and volcanoes, explaining the unexplainable forces of nature. They became living metaphors for our own internal struggles, from the Furies representing a guilty conscience to the Dwarves symbolizing hidden creativity. And they acted as guardians of cultural wisdom, like the Hopi Ant people preserving knowledge through cataclysm. These echoes from beneath demonstrate that our greatest stories are not frivolous inventions. They are born from the fertile soil of our deepest fears and our most profound curiosities about the unknown realms that border our own. As we now turn our gaze to new frontiers, to the crushing depths of the ocean, the infinite void of space, and the sprawling digital realm, we must wonder, what new beings will our minds conjure to inhabit these new kinds of darkness? What forms will the next echoes take? We would love to hear from you. Does your own town or culture have a local legend of a creature from below? Share your story in the comments, and let us continue this collective exploration of the mysteries that connect us all.